Here's the thing. I've been recently talking with a successful candidate that had 6 interviewing rounds during their on-site interview. And they said then I was actually hugely surprised that they asked me 6 times, tell me about yourself at the beginning of each session. So this should give you an idea on how often this question gets asked during job interviews, especially during on-site, but not only. Another reason for which you might want to take this seriously is this is a recruiter's preferred way to start a conversation, especially if they did not have time to look over your CV prior to the interview, because in case you're wondering, this does happen, and this does happen quite a lot. Now, okay, all good and well here, but why would you want to prepare 2 versions for tell me about yourself? Well, this simply because this question might arise in different contexts. For example, if you'd be asked, if you'd feel like the conversation with your recruiter is one that's very relaxed and they prefer, longer answers or more comprehensive answers, you would want to have an answer where you go by the books and talk about yourself with, eventually a power statement, eventually focus on your strengths, with your work experience, with your education, and of course, ideally with some highlights. And, some people also prefer a closing note here. However, not all interviewers are the same, and do not expect your interviewers to be expert interviewers either. So, especially for more technical rounds of interviews, there are people who are very concise and very direct and prefer shorter answers. And what do you do here? Because, it's not that as easy, to just cut short your answer with only the introductory statement, with only the power statement. It's not as easy as this. So, some interviewers prefer longer answers, while other interviewers prefer more concise answers. And usually, you will notice this during the conversation. And based on my on feedback that I received from other candidates, they felt like it was a significant advantage, the fact that they had these 2 versions over tell me about yourself. Keep in mind that the tell me about yourself should be an interesting answer, not a boring one. So even if it's a longer one, even if you go for 1.5 to 2 minutes straight talking about yourself, ideally you should also have an emotional component there, and you should talk about interesting information, not just perform a quick readout of your CV. Because even if the interviewer didn't read your CV previously, they will have your CV in front of them, so they could see that information. So if you just confirm what they can already see, that's not going to be a great answer. So the longer version should be interesting, and probably this is more complicated to do when compared to the shorter one, because if you just have a power statement and talk for half a minute about the highlights in your CV at once, that will be compelling by itself because it's not boring, it's just 30 seconds. But if you have to go for 2 minutes, you really have to go above and beyond to focus on the main highlights. So some common mistakes that I hear for tell me about yourself, besides the big one, the boring argument, is that often people forget to touch upon the emotional component. Often people talk about irrelevant experiences. In other words, they perform a readout of their CV or go with highlights from each and every role they've been working for the past 15 years. And you can imagine, the answer will be considerably longer. Other problems, in some cases, it won't go well with an interviewer to say generic statements like you're an exceptional manager with great leadership skills. It's too general. So probably you could say this 5-10 years ago, but now you must get more specific. You must get to what's that one thing that differentiates you from other candidates. So the focus on your strengths should be the theory that you should abide by. in this context. So there you go. In my opinion, it's time well spent if you prepare 2 versions for Tell Me About Yourself, going especially into an on-site interview, but also if time allows also for a telephone screening round. So hopefully you found this information useful.